The story happened with a young couple. After years of hard work, they were finally able to buy a small flat. Teju and Nami wondered why their apartment was very cheap, although it was such a spacious place. Sometimes they had a bit of a weird feeling, but both of them didn't think too much about it. Maybe it's just luck, they said to themselves. When entering their new home, both Teju and Nami had an indescribable feeling. They had never felt so delightful. They hugged each other, talked about their sweet memories, and outlined their plans for the future. Teju and Nami sat side by side on the sofa and talked with a lot of passion during the whole afternoon. They forgot to arrange the furniture until it had gotten dark. Then they began to clean the flat and put clothes in the closet. When Teju was checking his suitcase, he heard Nami's call from behind. He turned his head and saw his wife trying on a quality red dress. The dress was found in Nami's wardrobe. Perhaps the previous owner of the apartment had forgotten it. Because the dress looked expensive, they decided to keep the dress instead of throwing it away. What a coincidence. The dress fitted Nami very well, like it was designed for her. That night, after dinner, they went to bed early. It took only 5 or 7 minutes for them to fall asleep because they were tired. At midnight, because of thirst, Teju got out of bed and went to the kitchen. But when he turned to Nami, he couldn't see her. He thought maybe his wife was in the toilet. Approaching the living room, he felt a little strange. There was no light bulb lit. At first, Teju went to the bathroom nearby, but he couldn't find his wife. So he thought that maybe Nami was in the kitchen to drink water because both of them had eaten dry food that night. However, when passing by the mirror, Teju was startled a little bit. He saw a shadow of someone. Maybe it was just a hallucination. He stepped back. Then his heart beat so fast in his chest because he realized the hallucination was a woman in a red dress. Quickly looking at the door, Teju took a relaxed breath when he realized it was his wife, Nami. But her expression at that moment looked very strange. Seeing Nami, Teju moved to her and asked his wife, "Why are you still wearing this red dress? It's midnight already." But Nami did not care at all. Her eyes were vague as one who has lost a soul. Therefore, Teju nervously approached his wife and asked her many times what was wrong. Despite what he was saying, Nami didn't open her mouth to say a word. Teju gripped his wife in panic while she suddenly started yelling crazily. After a few minutes, Nami returned to normal. However, her face was a bit bewildered. She didn't know what happened. She wasn't able to remember why she was there, how she did any of it. Even Nami didn't know when she put the red dress on. Teju could not answer Nami's questions either. He assumed that she had been sleepwalking. Hearing that, Nami became even more worried and scared than before. She had never experienced anything like this before. Teju moved closer to comfort his wife. He tried to be calm, but inside he thought there might be something wrong with the house. Because of believing the forgotten red dress was a piece of bad luck, Teju immediately told his wife to take it off and put it aside. Although being worried about the weird dress, they fell asleep very quickly because their bodies were exhausted after a hard day's work. An hour later, Teju woke up again because of a strange feeling in his spine. Teju turned around to embrace his wife to feel more secure, but suddenly, his face immediately darkened. For some reason, in the dim-lit room, Nami's face looked scary. Her eyes were wide open to the extreme that her husband could clearly see the blood vessels inside. Looking down at her body, he really panicked when he saw Nami wearing a red dress again. As he couldn't keep calm any longer, he stood up and shouted angrily, but Nami still didn't react at all. In a fit of anger, he lost his temper. He had called out to her many times and she didn't answer, so he patted Nami's head very hard. The pain immediately caused Nami to wake up from her daze. She covered her face with her hands and shouted loudly. At this time, Teju had calmed down. He softly asked his wife why she put the devil dress on again, but Nami herself could not answer his question. Her face could not hide the fear. Because thinking that all of the trouble was somehow caused by the red dress, the husband rushed to help his wife take it off. Then, Teju took the dress in silence and got out of their bed with the astonishment of Nami. He was intending to throw it away. If he did that, everything would hopefully go back to normal. In the dark of night, Teju walked alone to the recycle bin near their apartment and dumped the beautiful red dress inside. But Teju was wrong. After he threw away the item that brought bad luck, everything became even worse. After returning to their apartment, both Teju and his wife could not sleep. He sat up and smoked a few cigarettes. Although Teju didn't stop thinking about what had happened, he still tried to be calm to reassure his wife. Hearing the comforting words of her husband, Nami gradually felt more secure. She tried to close her eyes to calm her panic. After Nami fell asleep, Teju smoked a few more cigarettes. Although thinking carefully about what they had experienced, Teju still couldn't understand it. At the time Teju decided to take a rest, his wife suddenly jumped up from the bed. He turned to his wife and asked, "Why don't you sleep? Is something wrong again?" Unlike the previous time, Nami immediately replied to his question, but it was a completely unfamiliar voice. His whole body was frozen, his heart beat fast, and his mouth stammered a few harsh words. He was both scared and worried about his wife. Before Teju finished a sentence, the woman turned to him again. She growled and shouted angrily at him. "Why did you throw my dress away?" Teju thought this time might be the same as the previous times, so he shouted loudly to wake his wife up. But Nami didn't care at all. She paced about the bedroom and rummaged around to find the dress like a mad woman. After watching everything, Teju sneaked up to her and hugged her in his arms tightly. But without him doing anything fierce, she slapped him across the face very hard. Because of the unexpected blow, Teju couldn't dodge it. As a result, he lost a tooth for what he had done. While he was still struggling to get up, Nami opened the door and rushed out. From that moment, Teju could confirm that she was not his wife at all. A few seconds after she left, Teju also tried to get up and chase after her as he feared that something bad would happen. She was gliding across the floor like a water puppet, which was different from a human being. After walking about 10 meters, the woman suddenly stopped and looked up at the sky. She then fell to the ground. Her body seemed to lose all strength. Teju hurriedly ran to Nami, lifting her head up and held loudly. No matter how hard he tried, she still didn't wake up. Later that night, he called an ambulance for his wife. Nami was unconscious for the whole of the next day until that night when she finally woke up. After Teju's wife overcame the critical condition, he could not hide his happiness. He totally forgot about the incident on the previous day. But when Nami woke up, she seemed lost in a daydream in which she couldn't remember what had happened. Nami's memories were like a broken tape. She didn't remember anything about her sleepwalking and actions the day before. The more she listened to Teju's story, the more she felt tormented. She feared that she would hurt her husband again. Not only Nami, but also Teju felt very troubled because the doctor said that she did not have the symptoms of sleepwalking or any other problems. Then he decided to go and to meet the previous owner of the apartment. Teju couldn't keep calm when he told his story and what he had experienced in the haunted flat. But the previous owner still insisted that his apartment had no problems whatsoever. The previous owner's explanation could not convince Teju, so the next day he decided to move them to another place. Until now, although living in a better apartment, Teju still had trouble sleeping every night because of the incident haunting him. Whenever he couldn't sleep, he would go online to find out more about his old apartment, as well as the red dress. The truth was that a long time ago, a woman was betrayed by her husband, so she hanged herself in that very apartment. Since then, everyone who was living in the apartment would see the red dress. However, no one could stay for more than a total of 3 days. House number 27 and the legend of the immortal man. Lunch is when the headquarters is at its loudest, as everyone gathers in the dining room. Boss Lu Feng and Captain Chow were also here for lunch. Everyone started chatting with each other. After stressful working hours, only after lunch Boss Lu Feng can relax a bit. Everyone was talking happily when suddenly Captain Chow saw a policeman sitting behind him. It was Vice Captain Yin of 702 headquarters. Captain Chow and Boss Lu Feng started to talk about the recently solved case led by Vice Captain Yin. Captain Chow was angry because he was on leave at the time of the case. He couldn't accept it. It was said that it was a severe case. Boss Lu Feng suddenly laughed and teased the captain that he should be lucky that he didn't take on the case. The whole team was bewildered and didn't know why the boss said that. It was on a break, so Boss Lu Feng also told the team about the compelling case. That day was like every other day at the police station. There were hardly any severe cases, so everyone was playing cards together. Suddenly, the phone rang. Everyone also told each other that hopefully it's not the phone to report the crime. But when the policeman answered the phone, the caller's announcement from the other end startled the officer. This policeman was Yin, the vice captain of the second team, because Captain Chow was on leave. His team would be on duty that day. Seeing Yin's panicked expression, his teammates also wanted to know what was going on. Yin sighed. It was a murder case. Someone died. His face looked grave, and he told his teammates to get ready to go to the scene. At that point, the teammates still didn't know what was going on, so he asked for more details. However, Vice Captain Yin's face suddenly turned grave. He just said that there was a murder and they needed to leave immediately. The whole team started in the afternoon, but at night they had not yet arrived because the scene was a suburban house. The car drove a bit more when it was already dark, and they reached the place where someone reported a murder. That was a spacious house, and around it were also large and beautiful houses, but there was no sign of anyone. They did not know who reported the crime. Mr. Yin and his teammates held flashlights in their hands because this area had almost no streetlights. In the past, this area was a place for nobility, but many things happened, so people abandoned it. Many of these houses were even abandoned. Mr. Yin felt very curious, not knowing who reported the crime because the scene seemed so quiet, as if nothing happened in the area. He double-checked. It was house number 27, as the reporter said on the phone. Mr. Yin's teammate tried to open the main door, but it seemed to be locked. Mr. Yin said they couldn't just break in like that and couldn't break the door and affect the surroundings. They discovered a small window located not very high up. So his comrade decided to climb inside through the small window. It was pitch black inside, so his teammate couldn't see anything. Below, Mr. Yin still reminded his teammate to be careful, and after entering, he quickly opened the main door. The policeman slowly climbed inside, but everything was too dark. Suddenly he slipped and fell to the floor. Beneath his feet was something very slippery, so he couldn't support his feet. Suddenly he realized on the floor was some very foul-smelling liquid. He quickly shined the flashlight on the hand he was leaning on the floor to see what it was. As soon as he shined the flashlight to look at it, he was amazed. There was fresh blood all over his hands at that time. Only now did he shine the light on the floor, which made him panic even more. The whole floor was smeared with blood. Blood was everywhere. Hearing the screams and the strong impact inside, Mr. Yin was also highly alarmed. At this time, Yin ordered the other policemen to break down the door immediately. They tried to kick and break the door, but the door was solid. It took more than a few minutes before they were able to break the lock and storm inside. When they got there, the four of them were surprised and a little scared. The floor was covered with fresh blood. It looked like murder just happened. The policemen were scared. With such a large amount of blood, there must have been a terrible murder here. Suddenly, Mr. Yin's teammate saw a door. There was also a lot of blood, so the team decided to go in there. Before going to the place, suddenly he saw a boy running very fast past through the door. The policeman was amazed because there was a murder here. Why were there children running around like that? He suddenly raised the gun reflexively just in case. Seeing that his comrades were on the defensive, Mr. Yin rushed to see the situation. Vice Captain Yin ordered everyone to prepare to raid the inside of the room and then slowly move towards the door. But everything inside was perfectly normal. They shined the lights around to get a closer look at the room. That was just a standard room. There was no trace of a fight or blood here. Vice Captain Yin ordered a search around the room to collect evidence. After searching for a while, Mr. Yin suddenly saw a strange picture hanging on the wall. It was a family photo of a husband and wife and their twin sons. But the expressions on their faces of the people in the picture were not happy. After looking around, there was no victim's body, so they decided to seal the scene first, and the following day it was easier to investigate. The following day at Headquarters 702, Vice Captain Yin held an emergency meeting. He let the person investigate that family and also knew the names of the family members. But the strange thing was that he did not find out who called to report the crime and where the victim's body was, so it was impossible to determine who the dead person was. That night, he was on duty as usual. The phone of crime reports rang again and again. Vice Captain Yin answered the phone. It was the same voice from yesterday. After receiving the call, Mr. Yin and a few teammates immediately returned to that house in the night. When they arrived, someone broke the seals and also opened the main door. The window didn't show any signs of breaking in, so the person didn't come in from the window. But the main door didn't show any signs of being vandalized, so how could he open it? Seeing that everything was too suspicious, Vice Captain Yin told everyone to prepare their weapons in case it was the culprit. They went inside and stayed alert because it was very dark inside, easy to ambush. The strange thing was that the blood on the floor had disappeared. Instead, there were only scratches as a fight happened. At this moment, the policeman suddenly heard a strange noise coming from behind. He immediately went back to check and saw a baby's tricycle rolling on the floor. When he turned around, it also stopped like it was looking at him. He found it odd, but Vice Captain Yin urged them to go up to the inspection floor. The team began to slowly make their way upstairs to look. The house was pitch black, but the moon was bright enough for them to walk up the stairs. As soon as they got there, the policeman in the lead suddenly panicked because the tricycle from earlier was rushing from upstairs towards them. They quickly ducked to the side so that the bike could plunge down the stairs. The bike went down very quickly and broke as someone pushed it down from above. At this point, they started to sweat because there was something scary about this house. But as policemen, they had to do their duty and went upstairs. But what was in front of them scared them even more. In front of them was a man sitting neatly on a chair against a wall. Before they would react, the man disappeared right before their eyes. They were shocked as to what was going on, and the man from earlier looked a lot like the one in the family photo. The whole team was still bewildered when downstairs they heard the sound of footsteps walking on the wooden floor. They hurriedly looked down in fear that the perpetrator would return to the scene to check. But what they saw surprised them. Downstairs was a woman with 2 children, looking very similar to people in the other picture. Before they could be calm, the woman and the 2 children turned and looked up at them, their faces covered in blood, white, blood pouring out of their eyes and mouth, looking very scary. Before they could recover, the woman and 2 children had disappeared before their eyes. Suddenly, the policeman closest to the top fell again, causing the 3 of them to fall from the top of the stairs. Vice Captain Yin and another teammate only had scratches on the skin. The policeman who walked first had suffered a severe head injury and was unconscious. Then they quickly left the house. Vice Captain Yin also took his teammate to the hospital. Fortunately, he was okay. But when asked about the incident, why did he fall down like that, the policeman was still panicking to tell. Just when everyone was still looking at the other mother and son, right behind them the strange man appeared again and reached out his hand as if to push the policeman. Because the policeman was so scared, he fell down and pulled everyone to follow him. Hearing this, Vice Captain Yin and his teammates looked at each other. They then rushed to the scene. At that time, people smashed a part of the house to search for the victim's body. As soon as Vice Captain Yin arrived, he was amazed. There were many people around, but no one could see inside except for the police. And what they had discovered on the floor made everyone in the team highly shocked. They stood still and pondered for a long time before the events in front of them. The bodies of the mother and 2 twin sons in the picture, as well as the souls they saw last night, they were soaked in a big pot and buried deeply in the ground. The strange thing was that their bodies didn't rot, they just looked like they were sleeping. So were the twins, but the pot was a bit small. How would all 3 of them fit in? Vice Captain Yin ordered their bodies to be brought back for forensic investigation to determine the cause of death. They quickly brought the bodies back to the headquarters. According to the initial autopsy, someone stabbed them with a sharp knife, which resulted in their deaths. However, it was amazing how they didn't have any wounds on their bodies. It was likely they healed on their own. The forensics team then showed the Vice Captain Yin the female victim's bone X-ray image. The victim's bones had many wounds, but it was showing signs of healing. After listening to the forensics, Vice Captain Yin wondered, how did that happen? The forensic doctor said that he had also heard of a method of witchcraft that could bring the dead back to life. And the way the woman and 2 children were soaked in a large jug of water was for that purpose. Hearing this, Vice Captain Yin also started to sweat because it was his first time encountering something like this. The forensic doctor said that he would continue to investigate. If there were any more clues, he would notify Mr. Yin immediately. Then something strange happened. Yin received an urgent call to the interrogation room. There was a suspicious man who asked to confess and asked the police to protect him. But for some reason he seemed to be very cooperative with the police. He said that he couldn't live in fear anymore. Only by going to prison would he be safe. Therefore, he would tell everything. He was a thief. That day he directed 3 more guys who decided to break into house number 27. Those 3 guys covered their faces, held knives, and burst into the house because they investigated that the house was usually only occupied by 3 people, the mother and her sons. With the mother's fierce resistance, they stabbed her to death. Then they also killed both the boys. They took away all the money and jewelry available in the house. Just as they were about to escape, a man entered the house from outside. Seeing his wife and children die tragically, the husband was furious. 3 thieves rushed in to attack, but the husband beat them up. Then the husband stole the knife and killed them all. Blood filled the floor with blood like a sea of blood. That day, because he was the last thief standing guard outside, he was lucky to escape death, but then he was always haunted by the events of that day. Vice Captain Yin asked about the husband's appearance. He described the husband's figure, and the unique feature was that there was a mole above the top of his eyebrow. Vice Captain Yin asked him if he knew where the husband was. After his comrades were killed, he let people watch and knew the husband's area, but did not dare to approach. According to the thief's instructions, the police came and searched around the area. This was a wild mountain area. After nearly a day of pursuit and scuffle, the police finally caught him. Because the husband was very dangerous, the resistance was very high, so the police carefully escorted him to the headquarters. Arriving at the police office, he was still very loose and showed no fear in front of the police, making Deputy Yin very angry. But in return, just his sinister smile and tantalizing answers. He admitted to all the murders to avenge his wife and children that day, but he seemed very happy about it. After the interrogation, the police brought him to the scene to get evidence and reconstruct the scene. On the way past the prison, the husband saw the thief who was still alive that day. The thief was scared and trembled when he looked at him. The husband just looked at him and gave him an evil smile. His eyes seemed like he wanted to eat the thief alive. Just a few minutes later, the thief did something terrible right in prison. He cut his own neck and wrists with broken bricks, bleeding to death. He died in a kneeling position, as if he was confessing his crime and not closing his eyes. As for the husband, the police took him to the house where the murder took place. When he stood in front of the pot containing the bodies of the mother and sons, the police wanted him to reveal his motives for doing it. But in return, the husband just said it was a way for his wife and children to be revived and live by his side forever, and said the police didn't need to know too much about it. Right after that, the husband said that there was nothing left for him to stay here. He had had enough fun. With his attitude, Vice Captain Yin was also surprised. And in an instant, the handcuffs were quickly removed by the husband. In the presence of all the police, he didn't use any tools. Despite the surrounding policemen pointing their guns at him, the husband remained calm as if nothing had happened. After that, the husband just looked at Vice Captain Yin, and Mr. Yin's whole body froze and couldn't move. In the presence of all the police, the husband leisurely went upstairs. Vice Captain Yin and his teammates also chased after him and asked him to stop, but he didn't seem to care. He walked to the front of the wall and suddenly stopped. The policemen chased him, but there seemed to be an invisible wall stopping them. They couldn't believe their eyes, but it was true that there was something in front of them that couldn't go. At the same time, the husband suddenly put his hand on the wall. Suddenly, the wall turned into liquid. In an instant, he went through the wall like he was sinking into a puddle. The police couldn't give chase, so they shot at him. He disappeared into the wall, leaving only the bullet holes in the wall. After that, the policemen were able to approach Vice Captain Yin, checking the wall. It was still as sturdy as usual, and the bullets were still digging deep into it. Suddenly, the floor shook violently like an earthquake. In a split second, the police officers and Vice Captain Yin were back at the old place where the husband left the water pot with the bodies of the mother and sons. And that husband has disappeared since then. There was no way to investigate his whereabouts. Hearing Boss Lu Feng talk about this, the whole team was shocked because they couldn't believe it happened. Boss Lu Feng just smiled, left the table and said that anything was possible in this world. Captain Chow was very curious about the case, so he deliberately followed his boss to ask more about the woman's ghost and 2 children. Boss Lu Feng just sighed and said that it's impossible to revive the dead. As the ghost of the woman who called the police, maybe she wanted to stop her husband. Witchcraft always had its downside. If people could be revived, they couldn't return to normal. Boss Lu also revealed that the mysterious man also had many thrilling anecdotes. He had terrifying abilities. It was best not to investigate him. At some point, he would tell Captain Chow and the others more about him. At police headquarters 703, the whole team was busy with new cases, primarily petty thefts that happened regularly in town. Even Boss Lu Feng did not have time to rest. He sat down to review the murders. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The person who came in was Captain Chow. He reported to his boss Lu Feng about the disappearance of many people recently in the mountainous area. Immediately, Boss Lu Feng ordered Captain Chow to prepare the entire team for the scene quickly. It was a severe case, so they could not take it lightly. Team 1 was ready to go to the scene. The incident was in a mountainside area next to town, so it didn't take a long time to get there. When they arrived, they knew that the person reporting the crime was a middle-aged man. His face was panicked and extremely scared when he said that his family members told him to go fishing but did not come back. He led the team to where his relatives said they would go and cast their nets to catch fish, but disappeared. The water surface was relatively calm at this time. Boss Lu Feng and everyone felt the surrounding air was full of the smell of death. This lake was quite big and looked very deep, and there were almost no fish because the lake's surface was tranquil without a ripple. It seemed very strange. Boss Lu Feng asked the man when this lake existed. The man said that this lake just appeared recently, but this was the old chemical factory area. Immediately, Boss Lu Feng ordered the team to take measurements and look around this lake. Previously, this area was a chemical factory serving the army. After a landslide, this lake was also formed. Boss Lu Feng then ordered the police officers to get ready to dive to the bottom of the lake to investigate. At the command of Captain Chow, they would dive to the lake's bottom to find the missing people. They would bring knives to protect themselves. After hearing the signal clearly, they began to plunge into the water, led by Captain Chow. The water of this lake was always calm without a ripple. Everyone in Boss Lu Feng stood on it waiting for news from Captain Chow. As for Captain Chow, after diving, he quickly reached the bottom of the lake, which was relatively deep. He glanced around at the bottom of the lake. It seemed that this lake had subsided and formed not long ago because the lake's soil had not yet wholly turned into mud, and the pieces of bricks and stones built by the people before were still very much left. Captain Chow continued to swim around to check. The light down here seemed very weak. Suddenly he saw something blurry in the distance. He decided to swim closer and discovered something which appeared to be someone's body. But why didn't it float on the water? Come to think of it, Captain Chow swam there quickly to see the situation. But when he swam closer to the place, he was amazed at what was in front of his eyes. At the bottom of the lake was a dead man, gripped by something, like the tentacles of a giant octopus. The strange thing was that even though he had been drowning for many days, the man's skin did not swell and looked like it had been sucked out of nutrients. Captain Chow was about to go over to see what had wrapped the man when something appeared beside him. It turned out to be another giant tentacle. It approached him from behind. He quickly glanced to see more clearly. That tentacle also had a lot of fangs sprouting out, looking scary. Right now, from below, similar tentacles began to appear, and the terrible thing finally came to Captain Chow. A series of other tentacles gradually appeared from the bottom of the lake. At that time, Captain Chow hastily turned his head and swam to the surface to escape. But unexpectedly, those tentacles were so fast, they grabbed his legs. Sharp fangs clung to his flesh, causing him terrible pain. It began to tear pieces of flesh from his leg as if it was food. Captain Chow reached out his hand to cut it off with a knife, but other tentacles surrounded him, wrapping around his arm. Fortunately, his teammates arrived in time to rescue him, cutting off those hideous tentacles. When the tentacles were severed, it spewed out a monstrous black liquid. The teammates were finally able to bring Captain Chow to the surface, free from the monster. Seeing that Captain Chow was seriously injured, his boss Lu Feng asked why, and was also very worried about him. Chow was panting now, reporting a giant monster below which had taken other victims to eat. What's more frightening, Captain Chow's condition was quite bad at that time. The places where those tentacles wrapped, the meat there was swollen like it was rotting. Both Captain Chow's legs and arms were starting to give off the stench of washed meat, and the pain was excruciating. After listening to his teammates' report about the incident at the bottom of the lake, Boss Lu Feng immediately ordered the team to prepare to drain all the water out of this lake. The whole team deployed the plan to destroy the monster instantly. In a few moments, the large capacity equipment used to draw water was delivered and ready to start draining. Many pumps were sucking the water below out of the lake. Boss Lu Feng and teammates were also waiting impatiently for what was in the lake after all. Because the lake was too deep, it took a long time to drain, and the sun began to set shortly. And the police officers also came to report to Boss Lu Feng that the lake water had been exhausted. As soon as they witnessed what was in front of them, the whole team was terrified. A monster or something terrifying appeared in front of them. It was huge. Its body was only made up of long tentacles and full of sharp fangs. It looked like a giant octopus, but that had no body part apart from the tentacles, like tentacles growing from the ground. Its tentacles still tightly wrapped the bodies of people who were thought to be missing. Their bodies were drained of their blood and dried up like mummies. The policemen grabbed their guns and started shooting at the monster because it had killed so many people. It must be destroyed. The bullets fired continuously at the tentacles, causing the monster to be injured and writhing in pain. Because it was so painful, it released the dead people on the tentacles, and the policemen took the opportunity to bring the dead people ashore. Then Boss Lu Feng ordered the implementation of Plan B. Large tanks of gasoline were prepared in advance and poured into the lake's bottom one by one. It seemed that Boss Lu Feng wanted to cook this giant octopus. They quickly poured gasoline down to drench the monster. Boss Lu Feng calmly pulled out a box of matches from his pocket and he began to light a match. Standing on high, he directly threw the match on the monster, and no one would be harmed by it again. Immediately the monster was on fire. It was in pain and writhed continuously with its tentacles. Its tentacles quickly burned away and its fangs slowly burned black and fell apart. Before long, the monster turned into a disgusting pile of black ash, and from the slime came a terrible stench like the smell of rotting meat, making everyone nauseous. After the monster was dead, the police officers were ordered to go down to the lake's bottom to look around. At the lake's bottom, scattered with many human bones, all the disappearances in the area were caused by it. Then Boss Lu Feng ordered the lake to be filled with soil. Finally, after dealing with the monster, the police returned the victims' bodies to their families. Also, they collected all the bones that were not intact for forensic examination to check the victims' identification. Boss Lu Feng also returned to the headquarters to review the case file. Captain Chow was seriously injured, but his bones were not affected, and he was treated promptly. Although the wound has not healed, Captain Chow had also rushed back to work. He did not want to miss the cases. He brought his boss Lu Feng a report on the case of a giant man-eating octopus. This octopus had mutated and lived underneath the abandoned chemical factory. When the lake was formed, it was also when it emerged and resided below. The case was quickly closed, and this case was also listed as top secret. After this case, Captain Chow was rewarded for his bravery. However, there were still many strange cases ahead waiting for Captain Chow. A peaceful village suddenly became more bustling because of a strange case. Boss Lu Feng and Captain Chow were also notified and quickly showed up. When they arrived at the scene, they met the policemen at the village and heard everything again. The victim was a boy who was only 13 years old, and according to the policemen, this area frequently had similar murders lately. Boss Lu Feng also inquired more carefully whether these murders were the result of robbery or if they were being investigated for other reasons. However, nothing was suspicious. No property was stolen, the children died in the same manner, and the villagers often said it to be the result of evil magic. As soon as he said it, both of them were whisked away to the victim's home, which also served as the crime scene. Leader and Boss Lu Feng were both taken aback by the victim's dead posture, which was out of the ordinary. The strangest thing was that the dumbbells are tied to the child's hands, which begs the question of why the perpetrator did the same, and the child's posture was also extremely strange. After observation, Boss Lu Feng also said that for some reason it related to the cause of the perpetrator's crime, because the dumbbell was possibly the perpetrator deliberately tying it to the ground and not wanting it to be tied to the child's hands. Boss Lu Feng decided to focus his investigation on the dumbbell. After careful examination, Boss Lu Feng ordered the boy's body to be brought down for further examination. The boy's body was slowly taken down, and there was no sign of any suspicion. Captain Chow approached and intended to examine the boy's insides, and after unbuttoning the boy's shirt, another strange thing appeared. Captain Chow hurriedly reported to his boss to see for himself. Both Boss Lu Feng and everyone present, after seeing the incident, were also very curious and a bit surprised. Underneath the shirt were some female overalls, which rural women usually wore as a bra. So why was this boy wearing it like that? The police chief of this area did not care much about the question. He said that due to the boy's gender, he dressed like that. But Boss Lu Feng didn't think so. He thought that all the strange things in a case were suspicious, couldn't be subjective. And after a scene inspection was completed, Boss Lu Feng ordered the boy's body to be returned to headquarters so that the forensic examination could be more thoroughly examined. The local police officer also followed along to the headquarters in order to investigate the case together, and everyone quickly returned so that the forensic analysts could soon examine the body. In the car, Boss Lu Feng asked about the previous cases, and was told by the police that the cases were very similar to how the crime was committed. And that police officer claimed it was because the children's families were members of a cult, which was causing all these problems. But Boss Lu Feng disagreed, and he said it was definitely an individual's cause, and blamed the police for taking the case lightly and didn't examine the scene carefully. Any case would have its cause, and it was impossible to unjustly blame anyone without fully investigating everything. Immediately the card returned to the headquarters. The forensic also had long-awaited orders. But the local police insisted that there was nothing in the small village for the perpetrator to commit the crime. Chief Lu Feng did not want to argue with him, so he had just asked them to hurry to the forensic room and listen to the forensic judgment. The forensic room at headquarters 703 was the most highly specialized forensic room in the entire organization. When they arrived, the forensic side was also nearing the end of the initial diagnosis. The policeman did not seem to believe what Chief Lu Feng said, so he was eager to learn the results. The forensic team discovered numerous suspicious items on the victim's body. Chief Lu Feng discovered many suspicious points as well, but he asked the forensic to speak carefully again to ensure that what he discovered was correct. Forensic examination had pointed out many singularities on the victim. The holes and the facial expressions of the victim was the most suspicious of all. On the victim's head, there was a hole like a nail, and it seemed that when the boy died, the killer proceeded to crucify the boy's forehead. The boy's face was very pale and his eyes had dark circles, not as dead as reported. At this moment, the policeman did not want to be said to be irresponsible, so he protested that the boy had just died this morning The forehead's injury has been caused by the boy who fell before his death. But the forensic insisted that the wound was caused by a nail stabbing, and according to autopsy, the boy had died a day earlier and was only hung up today. After hearing the forensics judgment, the policeman expressed fear of being reprimanded, so sweat was pouring out of him. But Boss Lu Feng never reprimanded him and asked more about the boy's family situation recently. At this time, the other policeman reported that the boy's family had been going back to his hometown for 3 days and that the boy was alone at home. After hearing all the clues, Boss Lu Feng guessed that the camisole was not by accident. It certainly had something hidden behind it. And the dumbbell, there was definitely a mystery in the way of killing. This case wasn't simple. According to the subordinates, all of the children killed in the area were roughly the same age. So based on all the clues, this was definitely a serial murder case. But why kill these children? They had nothing to take advantage of. Their family was also very poor, so what was the point of killing them? With the police's suspicions, Boss Lu Feng became enraged, believed that all deaths had cause and that nothing was meaningless. After being blamed, the police took the serious action to investigate the incident and together with Boss Lu Feng summarized the location of the murder and the perpetrator's general method of committing the crime. Finally, Boss Lu Feng ordered Captain Chow to quickly open a meeting with all the police in charge of the case. And the boss also ordered all the policemen in the area to attend this meeting. He wanted to coordinate to resolve the murder soon. After just over an hour, all gathered at the headquarters, waiting for Chief Chow to preside over the emergency meeting. He has prepared a map of the area where the recent murders happened. And all cases had one thing in common. It was that they were all about a month apart, and the victims were boys aged 13 to 15 years old. When the perpetrator commits the crime, they would dress the victim in women's clothing. And the crime points were not far apart. The perpetrator was likely to be in the central area, and the culprit was definitely only one person, and according to judgment, he would not be able to move far after causing such crimes, at least until next month. So it should make it easy to localize the area where the culprit was hiding. Because of the professionalism of the 703 investigation team, all the policemen in that area felt very awe-inspiring and delighted that they would quickly catch the killer. Boss Lu Feng immediately ordered the dispatch of the investigation squad, led by Captain Chow. After multiple investigations and ransackings, there was only one house that remained suspicious. All were consistent with those mysterious cases, so Captain Chow reported to Boss Lu Feng that the gun was used to enter the house. Not waiting for Captain Chow to finish his words, Boss Lu Feng was ready to raid, unable to let the suspect escape. Captain Chow and some of his teammates ambushed from behind. The back door was a tall, sturdy wooden door, but it was easily breakable as they went inside. There was a large courtyard inside, so they hid outside to observe the situation. After a while, without any movement inside, they immediately rushed in, and inside there was only one strangely dressed cloaked person sitting in front of an altar. He still turned his face calmly as if he didn't know what was going on. An old man looked old, his face wrinkled but frightening. Suddenly he jumped up and dashed away. He was moving so quickly that Captain Chow couldn't even catch up with him, but he hadn't gone far when he heard Chief Lu Feng's voice from the front yard. The suspicious man was apprehended in the front yard by Boss Lu Feng and his teammates after being rushed out. Captain Chow quickly removed his cloak to get a better look at his face, only to discover that he was in his mid-20s but appeared extremely old. Chief Lu Feng ordered an investigation into him. When he arrived at headquarters, he gradually revealed the heinous things he had done. During the interrogation, he appeared strange. He didn't act like a normal person. He claimed to be practicing a lifelong technique and that by killing 10 children, he could gather enough souls to do so. Wearing female clothing to increase the spirit of the soul, and after death, the soul would be held by dumbbells, unable to escape, and he would come to capture those souls. When he heard the murderer's sick words, Boss Lu Feng became enraged and ordered him detained immediately. Finally, the case would be closed as Captain Chow gathered all of the case documents. He returned them to Chief Lu Feng and gave them to the area police chief to keep on file in that area. He wanted them to keep it safe and to remember that every case required the police to focus their attention on it before it could be solved quickly. When Boss Lu Feng and Captain Chow left, he felt that humans were too cruel and that evil magic must be completely eradicated. Another mysterious case was closed, and the burden became heavier. It was a story about a guy named Karma, whose eyes could see ghosts. He made a living as a shaman and earned an income with his special ability. Today it was the weekend, but someone unexpectedly appeared outside. The door was opened by Karma's friend Ken, who was living in the same house. A man with an emaciated and tired face appeared in front of Ken. He inquired whether Karma was at home, but Ken did not respond directly. Instead, he invited the visitor to come in first. Seeing the young man's awkwardness, Ken pointed to the room ahead and said that Karma was in the room. The young man entered Karma's room with a slight smile to express his gratitude to Ken. After exchanging greetings, Karma knew that the guy was working for a nightclub. He came to see him because he had a very strange dream. Due to time constraints, the young man went straight to the point and told Karma about his dream. In his dreams, he always saw a woman crying bitterly in the corner of the room. He felt sorry for the girl and planned to visit her to console her and ask her questions. But as he got closer, the woman became agitated and would come over to strangle him. The girl's expression frightened him even more. A white face with no eyes. Flesh that has rotted and peeled into patches as if it was decomposing. After listening to Karma, he felt that the woman certainly had many twists and turns. To find out more information, Karma asked the guy if she said anything. The man immediately waved his hand, indicating that he knew nothing about her. Because the man didn't dare to approach when he saw the terrifying face, he couldn't dare to ask her anything. At the time, the man came to meet Karma solely to request that he take care of the ghost as soon as possible. He didn't get a good night's sleep as a result of the nightmare. After hearing what he had to say, Karma laughed lightly and imagined that the woman had been killed unjustly and had come to see him in his dream to ask for his assistance. After hearing what had happened, the man became concerned because he had never had the courage to approach the woman and thus would not be able to assist her in resolving any injustice. Finally, Karma stood up and agreed to assist the man. Only he had the ability to communicate with the girl in the situation. The two of them immediately went out. When they were walking across the living room, Kama had the sudden desire to ask Ken to solve the problem. Ken had always been fascinated by ghosts, so when Kama asked him, he had no reason to refuse. The three of them quickly arrived at the man's bar. The bar was on the 4th floor of a building with a nightclub beneath it. Previously, the building was a hotel, with a nightclub beneath it. Later, for the sake of convenience, some rooms on the 4th floor were converted into rooms for staff. After opening the door, Kama went around to assess the situation inside the room. With his special abilities, he could sense that the room was haunted. He immediately squatted in the middle of the room and scribbled some strange characters on the floor with a pen. After finishing the letters, Kama reached into his pocket and pulled out a bag of red liquid, a pair of chopsticks, and a candle. These were all tools he had learned to use in order to perform mystical rituals. When the man brought the requested bowl, Kama immediately took the bag containing the red liquid and poured it into the bowl, which he placed in the center of the pre-written letters. Then he folded the 2 chopsticks into a cross and placed them on top of the bowl before placing the candle on the chopsticks. As he prepared to finish the seance ritual, Kama stood up and smiled wickedly at the 2 confused people behind him, informing them that the woman would appear. When Kama said this, the other men's heartbeats quickened in fear. Ken, on the other hand, had complete faith in Kama, knowing that no matter how terrifying a woman's ghost was, he could handle it. The owner, on the other hand, was desperate to get rid of the girl, so even though the situation was tense, he gritted his teeth and persevered. When Kama shut all the doors and turned off the lights, the atmosphere in the room became quiet and gloomy. There was only 1 candle left lit in the room at the time. The light from the candle illuminated the room slightly. At the time, Kama took out a cloth puppet and tied a rope around its head. One of his hands grasped the other end of the rope, which was holding a puppet to the candle's head. The puppet's shadow was reflected on the wall by candlelight. It began as the shadow of a puppet, but after a few minutes, the shadow grew larger and moved to form an adult on its own. Ken, who witnessed the scene, was too terrified to say anything. A face began to emerge from the blank shadow. It slowly emerged from the surface of the wall, looking as alive as if it was real. The face came first, followed by the rest of the body. The young man and Ken were terrified and felt like fleeing. The sight of a woman stepping out from behind the wall was unbelievable. As for the man, his face was still stunned, unable to say anything, and he was only able to stare at the woman. Because she was the woman who appeared frequently in his dreams. The woman's expression, however, did not match the man's description. She appeared gentler and stood still, staring at Kama until he spoke first. Hearing Kama's promise to assist in restoring justice, the woman began to cry and shared her story. The woman's name was Aiku. Because of her poor family circumstances, she dropped out of school early to work in order to earn money. At the time, her mother was seriously ill and needed a sum of money to get medical treatment urgently. She went with an introduction to meet a wealthy individual who could lend her a large sum of money without charging interest. Seeing Aiku's beauty and pleading, the boss quickly agreed to loan Aiku the money and asked her to pay it back within 2 years. After that, Aiku began working around the clock in the hopes of paying off all her debts, but an incident occurred not long ago. The boss summoned Aiku to a private room one night because he needed to speak with her about something. Aiku noticed her boss blushing and knew right away that he had been drinking heavily. At the point, he motioned for her to take a seat beside him. Because Aiku couldn't refuse, she sat next to him while hearing about the debt she had from the boss. His statement caused Aiku to panic and she did not dare to look at him. According to the agreement, she would pay the full amount after 2 years, but there was no deadline to repay the debt at the time. The boss immediately laughed and pointed to the wine bottle on the table, telling her that if she drank the bottle of wine, all her debts would be forgiven. When Aiku heard his statements, she felt both happy and worried. After that, Aiku decided to pick up the bottle, tilt her head backwards and take a few drinks until the bottle ran out. Aiku's stomach became tense and uncomfortable after consuming a full bottle of wine. Nonetheless, she tried to calmly place the bottle of wine on the table and politely asked the boss to keep his promise because she had met the conditions he set. When her boss saw what was going on, he was taken aback because he had previously underestimated her. The boss believed that the money could make Aiku do whatever he wanted. He tried to seduce her into selling her body to him. Even though Aiku was inebriated and irritated by alcohol, she was fully aware. She realized her boss's intentions and became embarrassed and enraged. Because she was a kind person, she refused to sell herself for money, so she did not hesitate to slap the boss to express her displeasure. The boss's face was expressionless as he was brutally beaten, but his attitude quickly shifted, and he became enraged as a result of Aiku's actions. He couldn't keep his rage in check and immediately raised his foot, kicking Aiku to the ground. He even summoned his people to come in and beat Aiku mercilessly. After a while, the poor girl was eventually beaten to death. Despite knowing that the junior's actions went beyond their original intentions, he decided to handle her until the end. At the time, there was an empty room upstairs that was rarely used, so the boss hid Aiku's body there and converted it into a staff room. Karma couldn't help but sigh and lament the unfortunate girl. However, the fact that she knew who the enemy was without seeking vengeance in order for her to be freed made him wonder. It was not that Aiku didn't want to leave, but something in the room was keeping her from doing so. Karma did not respond. Instead, he went to the door to look around and look for the main door frame. Karma eventually found a pair of scissors on the door frame. The boss managed to seal Aiku's spirit inside the room due to his fear of retaliation from her soul. Karma turned to face Aiku, held up the scissors in his hand, and told her that now there was nothing to stop her. She could do whatever she wanted. When Aiku finished listening, Aiku smiled contently. The ghost of Aiku slowly exited the room and vanished. In the next day, the young man rushed to inform Karma of the shocking news. The boss had a freak accident and went insane after being avenged by a so-called ghost girl. It was exactly what he deserved in retaliation for his crimes.